Damna Srina Sada Nirasta Kuhagam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality Godhead, from our respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen in water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma Pujita Kaitravotra Paramo Nirmatsanam Satam Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadam Tapa Trayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vapure Ishvaraha Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra Krite Bihi Sususubhistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpaturu galitam phalam sukumukad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur ahorasika bhuvi bhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 10, verse 11 and 12. Sat Sangan Muktadu Sango Hatun Not Sahate Buddha Krityamanam Yaso Yasya Sakrit Akarnya Rochanam Tasmin Yasta Diya Partha Sahiran viraham katam darshana sparsa samlapa sayana sanabhojanai. The intelligent, who have understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees, and have become freed from bad materialistic association, can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation, meaning Krishna's separation? For they have been intimately associated with his person, seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, and sleeping, sitting, and dining with him. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The living being's constitutional position is one of serving a superior. He is obliged to serve by force the dictates of illusory material energy in different phases of sense gratification. And in serving the senses, he is never tired. Even though he may be tired, the illusory energy perpetually forces him to do so without being satisfied. There is no end to such sense gratificatory business, and the conditioned soul becomes entangled in such servitude without hope of release. The release is only effected by association with pure devotees. By such association, one is gradually promoted to his transcendental consciousness. Thus, he can know that his eternal position is to render service unto the Lord and not to the perverted senses in the capacity of lust, anger, desire to lord it over, etc. Material society, friendship, and love are all different phases of lust. Home, country, family, society, wealth, and all sorts of corollaries are all causes of bondage in the material world, where the threefold miseries of life are concomitant factors. By associating with pure devotees and by hearing them submissively, attachment for material enjoyment becomes slackened, and attraction for hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord become prominent. Once they will go on progressively without stoppage, like fire in gunpowder. It is said that Hari, the personality of Godhead, is so transcendently attractive that even those who are self-satisfied by self-realization and are factually liberated from all material bondage also become devotees of the Lord. Under the circumstances, it is easily understood what must have been the position of the Pandavas, who were constant companions of the Lord. They could not even think of separation from Sri Krishna, since the attraction was more intense for them because of continuous personal contact. His remembrance by his form, quality, name, fame, pastimes, etc., is also attractive for the pure devotee, so much so that he forgets all forms, quality, name, fame, and activities of the mundane world, and due to his mature association with pure devotees, he is not out of contact with the Lord for a moment. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, Prabhupada makes a lot of wonderful points here, and we should understand them. He says, the living being's constitutional position is one of serving a superior. Well, that's a fact. Everybody serves a superior. You have the spiritual master and spiritual authorities, and you have parents, and you have team leaders and CEOs, and you have presidents of the country, and you have all kinds of people that are superiors that we have to serve. When you pay your taxes, obviously you're serving somebody, right? You're serving the government and the president. So that's point one. Everybody's constitutional position is to serve. Either you serve Krishna or you serve Maya. Right? But you can never stop serving. Or you serve your own lust and greed. Lust, anger, and greed. So when you don't serve anyone else, you end up serving your lust, anger, and greed. Next point. He is obliged to serve by force the dictates of illusory material energy in different phases of sense gratification. Well, that's the whole point. We are attached to sense gratification. That's what keeps us in this world. That's why we came to this world. We didn't come here so that we could surrender to Krishna. We came here so we could become Krishna's competitor and serve our own senses instead of serving Krishna's senses. We want to become our own proprietor. We want to have our own family. We want to have our own bank account and so forth. All that is based on the desire to dominate and exploit. That's why we're in the material world. We chose voluntarily to walk away from Krishna and become his competitor by trying to dominate and exploit the material nature. It's the same thing as in the Bible. When the number 2 person in the spiritual world of the Christians was the angel Lucifer. And Lucifer revolted against God, and he came to the material world to destroy God's dominion over Adam and Eve. According to the Bible, they were the first male and female. According to Srimad Bhagvatam, the first male and female were Swayambhuva, Manu, and Satyavati. What's her name? Satarupa, yes, Satarupa. So you see, there are a lot of concordances with the Bible about the beginning of the material creation. But in the case of Adam and Eve, they were living in the Garden of Eden, which was an ideal life. They didn't have any worries. They didn't even wear clothes. They walked around naked. And just like, sometimes people in their house, they'll walk around naked. Not you, but crazy people do that. And they had no shame, and they had no anxiety at all. They didn't have to work. All they had to do was just eat nice fruits and be full of love for God. But the Lucifer, who became the devil, was able to put a doubt in Eve's mind, because God said, look, there are hundreds and thousands of trees here. They're all producing fruits, all kinds of delectable fruits. So you can eat from all the trees except one. Don't eat from the tree of knowledge and suffering, or whatever he called it. And that was the only stricture that they had. Everything else was okay. But the devil put a doubt in Eve's mind that by eating the fruit of that tree, God was hiding from them. He forbade them to eat it because he was hiding from them a greater type of pleasure that they had never experienced before. So this is the original fake news. See? And unfortunately, Eve believed him. Well, they had everything they wanted. They had eternal life and everything. So she eats the fruit of the forbidden tree, and immediately she feels shame. She has to hide her nakedness, and she feels guilt because she disregarded the one thing God told her and her husband not to do. Now, because misery likes company, she convinced Adam to also eat the fruit. See, and that's symbolical, because women who are not under control are representatives of Maya Devi. So as soon as they have that type of freedom from any control, they assume the position of Maya Devi, and men who are weak and are not following regulative principles, they also fall down and they become, also representatives of Maya Devi in that sense, because they become addicted to sense gratification. So men and women fall down by not following the instructions given by God. Now, they don't follow those instructions, but now they follow other instructions, because our constitutional position is to serve. So now, instead of serving Krishna, they serve themselves selfishly, and whatever expansions that they produce, children, uncles, aunties, and grandparents, and great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents, and so forth, and then their own nationality and their own ethnic group. And so this expansion of I am this body, and the goal of life is sense gratification, expands, gets bigger and bigger. And so what Prabhupada says here, he is obliged to serve by force the dictates of the illusory material energy in different phases of sense gratification. So as soon as this sense gratification becomes the primary goal, rather than serving the senses of Krishna, we are forced to act. At that point, before that point, when we were acting under the instructions of Krishna, we were not being forced to do things against our own interest, against our self-interest. But as soon as we go away from Krishna and we want to become Krishna's competitor, then we're forced to do things by the modes of material nature and the illusory energy. So this is explained in Bhagavad Gita also. It's a big issue, because and the symptom of such people who are being forced is they think they're independent, but they're not independent. They're being forced to do all these things. So this is explained in the 13th chapter, where it says, it's said in several places in Bhagavad Gita. Let's see where it is. Yeah. The living entity, okay, in 1322. Purusha pakritisto hi bhunkte pakriti jaya gunai. Karanam gunasangasya sadasad yoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. Okay. Then it says that one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interactions of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. And then it says, one who can, 13th chapter, 30th verse. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Okay. And then it says, all right, so one who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. So when we are under the influence of the modes of nature, it's the body and and the modes of material nature that are directing us. We're not independent. We're being forced to do things. Huh? Right. 336. Okay. So this is what people don't understand. They actually believe that they are independent. And yeah, Arjuna says, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Yeah. Well, kama esa kroda esa ragaguna samudbhavan mahasana mahapatma vidi etnam ihavarinam. It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So it's this lust for material sense gratification that makes us a prisoner of the modes of material nature, and then the modes of material nature, as lust, anger, and greed, dictate to us what we do. We're not actually free. We're being forced to do things. So this concept of being forced is completely contrary to what people actually believe. They think they're independent by being attached to sense gratification, and they revolt against any instruction from Krishna or devotees, and thus they become prisoners of the cycle of birth and death. See? It's a vicious cycle. Then Prabhupada says, and in serving the senses, he is never tired. In other words, even though someone is tired, even though someone is being beaten up by material nature, still they go back for more suffering over and over again. See? Even though he may be tired, the illusory energy perpetually forces him to do so without being satisfied. So there's never real any satisfaction, no matter how much sense gratification they have. And they keep going back and back to get slapped and slapped around more and more. There is no end to such sense gratificatory business, and the conditioned soul becomes entangled in such servitude without hope of release. So this is the desperate and, let's say, dead end that people end up in. They don't know anything else other than sense gratification. And even from the sense gratification, they're not getting any satisfaction, because as soon as they finish one sense gratification, again, they desire more sense gratification. And what happens is, eventually, they get exhausted and they say, okay, I'm renouncing. But Prabhupada says that renunciation, at the bottom of the pit of that renunciation, is the burning flame of sense gratification, of desire for more sense gratification. So it's not a real renunciation. It's just a fake renunciation, because they have failed so many times in getting satisfaction. So people are going through acceptance and rejection, and both are hopeless situations. And eventually they go back to sense gratification, trying again for sense gratification after a period of renunciation. So that is called acceptance and rejection based on sense gratification. Both things are fake. They're not real. And because of that, the suffering of the soul is infinite. There's no end to it. That's why he says there's no end to such sense gratificatory business, and the conditioned soul becomes entangled in such servitude without hope of release. The release is only effected by association with pure devotees. By such association, one is gradually promoted to his transcendental consciousness. Thus he can know that his eternal position is to render service unto the Lord, and not to the perverted senses in the capacity of lust, anger, desire to lord it over, etc., lord it over in material nature. Material society, friendship, and love are all different phases of lust. So, here we've discussed this before. There's a difference between lust for sense gratification and love for Krishna. It's like the difference between iron and gold. They may look alike a little bit, but they're legions apart, because lust for sense gratification, as we already read, is the greatest enemy of mankind. And Prabhupada explains this very nicely. He says, the more one is addicted to lusty, let's say, activities, the more one suffers. It's a law of nature, that as soon as there's sense gratification, suffering follows it. This 5th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, where he says, the more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. So this is like the law of gravity. What goes up comes down. And this is another law of nature. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. The miseries always follow sense gratification. And so the only way people can get out of this vicious cycle that can be eternal, because the soul is eternal. So you can eternally be in Maya or eternally be in Krishna consciousness. The only way to get out is through association with genuine devotees. And Prabhupada says that by associating with pure devotees and by hearing them submissively, attachment for material enjoyment becomes slackened, and the attraction for hearing about transcendental activities of the Lord becomes prominent. Once they will go on progressively without stoppage, like fire and gunpowder. So that's a nice image, fire and gunpowder. So again, in the 3rd chapter, it's very explicitly explained that the little bit of sense gratification that we may have convinces us to keep trying over and over again. You know, and this is like the curse of sense gratification, because the little bit that one gets convinces them to keep going and not stopping, even though every time they engage in sense gratification, misery follows. So Prabhupada says, therefore, this lust is the symbol of ignorance by which the living entity is kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. That little bit of pleasure one gets out of sense gratification is the ultimate enemy, because it convinces us to keep trying over and over again and trying to find that idyllic place where I will be happy in the material world. And it's impossible. It's impossible to be happy in the material world. The little bit of happiness that one gets is actually relief from suffering, temporary relief from suffering. It's just like buying shoes that are too small for your feet because you like the model, you like the style. So you put those shoes on and you walk around. At the end of the day, you have a headache, your feet are hurting you, they're being pinched all the time. And when you take off your shoe, you say, ah, that feels so good. But it doesn't feel good. It's not really happiness. It's simply the temporary relief from pain. That's what people call happiness, the temporary relief. So, you know, when they take a vacation and go to Las Vegas or places like that, and they engage in sense gratification, they say, ah, that feels so good. But it doesn't relieve the pain, right? It's a false relief. And then they come back again to Seattle and they start working again and all the problems come back. You see? So it's an illusory thing. But that some feeling of happiness, actually that so-called feeling of happiness, is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. So there's two big points here. One is that little bit of sense gratification that one may experience is the ultimate enemy. And the second is, every time we engage in sense gratification, misery will follow. So these are points that materialistic people will not accept. They'll say, no, I don't believe that. I'm happy. I'm getting all the sense gratification I want. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's not true. And look what happened to all these guys, the Harvey Weinsteins and the Jeffrey Epsteins and all the Steins. Look what happened to them, you know. Huh? Well, he got his early on. He didn't. It wasn't. He was paraplegic, right? So he was suffering his whole life. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Everything's there. The problem and the solution. Haribol. How are you doing? Okay. No, you should say I'm suffering like anything. In the come more often. We have to hear this every day because we forget. As soon as we walk out, we forget. We think, "Oh no, I can still have some sense gratification, right?" And we get clobbered again. Please, thank you. Haribol, Haribol. Huh? Yeah. Actually, it's 8:30. Yeah. Haribol.